we will go through a general list of things that usually happen when we make contact, giving you an overview of all the different stages, all the different phases, all the different steps that are often involved in contacting a new civilization. Now, of course, depending upon the civilization, not every step is always necessary, and sometimes there may be additional steps to take into account the belief systems of the society, the way the society functions, so on and so forth. Nevertheless, this will give you a general idea not only of the phases of first contact that we engage in our society, but it will also give you an understanding of exactly where you are on that schedule. So, we will go through the list. Some things will be self-evident. Some things we will provide a little tiny bit of an explanation for, just to clarify the idea. Nania, with your assistance, please read the first thing on the list.
Okay. Number 1, discovery of the civilization.
All right. Now that's relatively self-evident. We become aware that such a civilization exists and is at a stage where the first phases of communication, connection, and contact can occur. In your case, we understand you've arrived at a place, and have for some time, where you've begun to realize that you may not be alone in the universe, and you begin to send out a vibrational invitation that says you are curious about learning more. And then next?
Observation of the civilization.
We watch, we observe, we measure the energy. This is where you begin to see upsurges in what you call UFO activity around the globe, beginning to take stock of exactly what the situation is on the planet. In your case, of course, we discover that you have different nations, different factions, different kinds of belief systems, and we begin to formulate an understanding of how to relate to the vibrations and reality you have set up for yourselves. And next?
Determine the potential for contact.
Again, in taking all these readings and in assimilating and integrating all the information, we come up with an understanding of the probability for which contact may occur within certain time frames. And next?
If contact potential is high, choose a life or connection in the civilization.
So as we have said, the channel in your linear framework is one of our past lives. We almost always choose a life in the civilization that is ultimately going to be contacted, so that we can, through experience, understand the civilization more deeply, and then be capable of drawing upon that with the future self of that being, which in this case is me. So the idea is also that because we do this, it gives us an ability to understand the references, the idioms, the culture, and allows us to be more relatable, and you more relatable to us. Without this process, without this step, things would take a little longer, because we would be literally too alien to each other, because our society in many ways is very different than yours. And even the small amount of what we have described our society to be is a tiny percentage of the way we actually function. Much of what goes on in our world, in our reality, we haven't even delivered to you yet as information. Nevertheless, we have enough understanding of each other to communicate.
Then you want to design the life to provide necessary elements for future contact.
Yes, so the past life will then go through a pathway, a process that will give them what they need for the purpose of the future communication. And in this case, in the channel's life, there were certain incidents that occurred that prepared the channel to have the ability to do this when the time was appropriate to begin.
Generate sightings and observe reactions and responses.
This is always a fun one for us. Because even though there have been observations taking place, and sometimes you may catch a glimpse of the ships that are doing the observation, now the sightings begin in earnest. We allow you to really see the ships. We really watch and observe and understand the reactions that you have within your societal structure about the existence of our ships, and go from there.
Calculate the timing for various phases of contact.
By then gauging the reaction and responses that we get from all of you by having a slightly closer encounter with our civilization through the viewing of our ships, and a few other things and methodologies, we then can begin to see the structure unfold automatically in synchronicity to the general timing as it relates to your society. One of the outcomes of this is the understanding that still remains true at the moment as the highest probability of the window for open contact, which is approximately between your years of 2025 to 2033. That came out of the synchronicity that was the result of the gathering of the information of the reactions and responses to the sightings of our ships.
Guide synchronicity to prepare connection with the individual.
In other words, now that the life is being lived of the past self, we now create an incident moment. For the channel, this was actually the sighting of our ship on 2 occasions. You will see this played out in the film you will be witnessing later, so that you can see exactly how this occurred. But nevertheless, this was the inciting incident that began to propel the channel to consciously begin to investigate, well, as you often say, what the hell is going on? This is not the way we were told the world was. I need to look deeper into this. Which then led him down the path in a more accelerated way to learn what he needed to learn so that when the time came to do the channeling, he would be better prepared.
Initiate connection with connection individual.
So then in the channel, through synchronicity, being guided to go into a channeling class and learn the idea of channeling, not even knowing he was going to become a channel consciously at that point, then the telepathic connection that occurred in that class was the beginning of the real communication, the conscious communication with the channel, to allow him to decide for himself whether or not to continue on that path. And so?
Disseminate information over time.
As you are seeing now, that we have done with all of you, bringing through ideas and information into your society to see what you do with it.
Observe reactions and responses to information.
To see what you do with it. And this means to watch whether or not you are capable of remaining within alignment of your own energy and within integrity in your own society in the understanding, application, and utilization of the information. This will tell us a lot about how you will in the future react to more information and whether you're actually ready for it.
Initiate higher level communication with the connection individual.
This means that a blending begins if the individual, that is the past self, is starting to really open up to the idea and understanding of the connection that exists between us in the non-linear sense now, not the linear sense of saying, all right, that's my future self, this is the past self, but in the non-linear sense of understanding higher dimensional perspectives of this connection. For example, the idea that from a higher perspective, we are one and the same soul, one and the same being expressing itself in what you would call 2 different parallel reality time frames simultaneously. Once the channel begins to grasp the idea, once the downloads to the channel begin to filter into his consciousness system, and he starts beginning to view things more 3-dimensionally, 4th-dimensionally, 5th-dimensionally in the way that we do, then there can be a heightened degree of acceleration of the kind of information that can be delivered through that connection individual.
Choose additional individuals to disseminate the information. Thank you, Tadeo. Generate additional sightings to observe any changes in responses.
So again, phase 2 of the sightings, you will find the idea of such things then as the Phoenix lights and all sorts of things that stand out in a very, very powerful way to see again, what does the society do with this? What do individuals do with this? Many individuals began to become very accelerated after that kind of a sighting, although we also notice that the society at large doesn't seem to want to talk about things like that still. But again, this is a general assessment. Obviously, we understand that there are different reactions and different rates of expression around your globe because of the different nations, the different belief systems, so on and so forth. So some parts of your world are willing to acknowledge these things a little bit more openly, and some parts still remain relatively clandestine about these issues and experiences. So again, we take readings to see where you're all at, both individually and collectively, with the more powerful, more blatant, more obvious sightings that are then presented to you.
Generate contact symbols.
This, obviously, such as what you're seeing here as the Sedona vortex array and many other kinds of symbols that are representative of the vibrational frequency of contact, then begin to also be disseminated into your society along with the general information, so that you can kind of have a shortcut version, a condensed version of the information and the energy in these forms as permission slips to help accelerate and see what you're actually attracted to use. Because this, again, your attraction to these symbols tells us a lot about what specific vibrational frequency each individual happens to be on based on what they're attracted to.
Initiate phase-shifted contacts when and where appropriate.
So in other words, this is the upshot of what we have said to many of you, in that while many of you are waiting for contact to happen, contact in many ways has actually occurred face to face. But they usually happen in a slightly shifted reality that is similar to your physical reality, but actually isn't your actual physical reality that you consider to be your normal reality. But then you forget that these things happen, and that serves the purpose of allowing you to remember that these things have already happened at your own pace, and we use the rate at which you remember as a measurement device to determine when you are ready for more conscious realization of contact.
Observe the rate of recall of phase-shifted contacts.
What we just said.
Reassess and disseminate potential timing for open contact.
And again, the window at the moment remains the same, although there may be certain small bubble windows here and there around the world that can be somewhat accelerated to the general window we have given you, depending upon other things that may happen in your society, for example, such as your own discovery that life might exist somewhere off your planet. Whether that means an intelligent civilization or not is not the issue. Just the very idea that you discover for yourselves that life is possible elsewhere other than Earth can change your mindset to help accelerate the idea of contact with other civilizations.
Observe responses to announcement of timing.
Again, by letting you know such things as the probabilities of contact, we again gauge how you respond and react to that, and it adds more information as to whether that window needs to slide up or down, or other things may need to happen with it, or other presentations may need to occur.
Observe any changes in the status of the civilization.
Again, we watch very closely for the kind of things that are going on in the society, and recognize through the positive and the negative expressions an acceleration that determines and lets us know when things are coming to a head, when thresholds are about to be crossed, when major shifts are about to occur within the collective and individual consciousnesses on your planet. So again, we can better gauge the timing for contact.
Assist in balancing planetary energies.
The reason that my ship is above the Sedona vortex is specifically for this purpose, of adding our frequency into the vortex that is connected to all other vortices on your planet in a very powerful way, along with other ships over other vortices around your globe, and thus help balance out the energy of these vortices, which then emanate these frequencies so that when you come in contact with them, they help amplify whatever it is you bring into the vortex. And that's both positive and negative. But it's the idea of aiding and assisting with the balancing, blending, and acceleration of the energies globally around your planet to stabilize, ultimately, the energy field of your world and make it more conducive to the idea of open contact, because the vibrational state has to raise and meet us halfway before it will really be a compatible vibration for the level of contact that can occur with many other civilizations.
Generate primary tools of contact.
Again, similar to the idea of the symbols, there are certain things that, depending on the society, then have to happen. So in some societies, as for example is being done now, there are tools of contact that help accelerate the process, such as the documentary you're about to see. This is actually a tool of contact and will have an effect depending upon your responses and reactions to it and the responses and reactions of others around the world. Other civilizations on other worlds may require other kinds of societal cultural expressions, either something like a book or a play or some other form of information or creative expression that will allow them to engage with that tool in a way that will best serve that society to help accelerate the probability of contact.
Initiate filtering of non-compatible states.
This is what we talked about the idea of the splitting prism or the train station where the tracks are going off in different directions, and to make sure that you are aligned harmoniously with the train you want to be on, because it will be more and more challenging to jump the train in the future because the tracks are getting farther and farther apart. In other words, all the frequencies are starting to, in a sense, refine themselves into different streams that are representative of very specific realities. And ultimately, even though you may be able to experience many different kinds of things going on in your reality now, or at very least observe many different kinds of things, including things that are not necessarily vibrationally compatible with your preference, in the future, it will be more and more challenging to witness or experience anything that has nothing to do with whatever vibrational track you chose to be on. So this is simply an encouragement to make sure you're on the correct track, on the correct train that is most harmoniously aligned with your true self.
Become the prime mentor of the contact program.
As we have recently said, my father held the position of the head of the First Contact Council, which has now fallen to me. Because in the idea of being the first contact specialist and the representative to your planet at this time that is primary from my civilization, it has now fallen to me to be in charge of the rest of the program.
You're doing a good job.
Why, thank you. So are you.
Introduce the Contact Council to the civilization.
That's coming up, although you've had a brief glimpse, when my father did in fact communicate through the channel to your civilization relatively recently. But this is the phase you're at now. This is where you fall on that schedule of first contact protocols. You are about to, in the near future, be introduced more clearly to the actual entire First Contact Council, because now that you've arrived at this point, you have to know who they are and they have to know who you are.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Accelerate sightings and awareness of life beyond the civilization.
So again, these things are coming up. You're not in this phase yet, but it's approaching sometime within the next few years.
Observe responses.
Yet again.
And then initiate precursor contacts.
We will be talking in more detail about the precursors in an upcoming transmission from your New York area. But the general idea is that there are certain kinds of beings that will elicit certain reactions from you when you are in their presence. And it is those reactions to those beings that we will be watching very closely to really determine how ready you are to actually have extraterrestrial beings walking among you as a matter of course.
So we want to observe the reactions to that, to the
Yeah.
precursors. And then we want to initiate isolated physical contact.
Yes, this will start to become a little bit more toward the vibration of your physical reality, where we can begin here and there in isolated places, at isolated moments, the beginnings of the idea of open contact with certain individuals, certain groups that are ready for it at that time.
And you want to expand contacts over time.
Yes, and this will then be entering that window of 2025 to 2033, so that by the end of that window, there will be a general recognition across the entire globe that open contact with extraterrestrial civilizations has actually officially begun.
Initiate final sightings prior to open contact.
Yes, because open contact in the sense of some individuals here, some groups there, so on and so forth, is not the final open contact, which is with every single form of life on your planet, not just you humans. You are an entire system, and to us, open contact with Earth means open contact with Earth, the entirety of the consciousness in a variety of ways you have yet to imagine, but it's coming.
Hence the need for interspecies communication.
Yes.
Observe responses to the final sightings.
Yes.
And then initiate open contact.
Yes.
And final determination for continuation of open contact.
Because even at that moment, there may be things that people on your planet and whatever civilization we are contacting may make a choice to react negatively to, that we will then filter in and factor into the idea of whether the contact should occur in that way. Now, this may be anything from a slight adjustment to the way contact is occurring to the idea that contact should not continue at all. You will fall somewhere within that spectrum, and at that moment, based on true open contact, that will be determined according to what is truly best for the society and the civilization.
Initiate information exchange.
One of the informational exchanges, as we have recently said, that you would be given in open contact will be the delivery of your entire true history, filling in all the gaps that now exist in your understanding of your so-called past. Such things as true information about Atlantis, true information about your beginnings, true information about other civilizations that have come and gone on your planet, and many other things that you don't actually have recorded in your history right now for a variety of reasons.
Initiate any special procedures.
This will be determined at the time as to what any special procedures might need to be, because that will really be the true beginning of the incorporation and enlistment of your civilization into the interstellar alliance. And we will see what needs to happen for your civilization to allow such a transition to operate as smoothly as possible at that time, whatever your special needs may be at that moment.
Prepare the civilization for interstellar alliance membership.
As we said, this will include many different phases unto itself in going through the idea of becoming a full-fledged member of the Interstellar Alliance, if that's what you wish, which hasn't yet really been fully determined.
And you want to train civilization to discover other civilizations.
Yes, as we have often said, there are other civilizations that are somewhat around the same basic level that you are, and many of them have, in some sense, been left alone because you will become their UFOs. You will be making first contact with them, and we have left them open as your training ground to follow in our footsteps.
Amazing. Guide civilization's initial contacts with other civilizations.
Yes, we will be there to mentor you and guide you along the way so that you will not inadvertently blow up any planets. Just kidding, we think.
Initiate membership in the Interstellar Alliance.
Then you will become full-fledged members after having had some experience with interacting with other civilizations yourself by being the initiators of those first contacts. And that means you have open to you the expanse of the galaxies, of the universe, the sharing of technologies with us and other civilizations, and spanning the stars and truly becoming Homo Galacticus.
Initiate specific programs relevant to the new member.
Yes, you have your strengths, and therefore many different kinds of programs from your membership in the Interstellar Alliance will take advantage of what it is you bring to the Interstellar Alliance that is unique to you. Because it is all of that diversity that we cherish. It is all of the strengthening of the individual society that you are that will add to the unification and harmony of the interstellar alliance by letting you really express the strengths and the uniqueness of your being.
And finally, continue relations with experienced member civilization.
Yes, at that point you will be considered an experienced member civilization, and there are many, many, many things, many opportunities, many different kinds of experiences that then can be opened up to an experienced member civilization that, again, right now may be far beyond what you imagine membership would actually be. But you'll be able to explore at that time many different kinds of things that go beyond any of the so-called science fiction scenarios you've gotten used to about what it means to actually be a member of an alliance. It goes way beyond that and goes way deeper inside your consciousness than you may know. And so then.
And so I did have a question.
Yes?
When you mentioned about the final determination for continuation of open contact, or even earlier, isn't
Yes.
there another time where it's assessed whether or not a civilization will go forward with contact or not?
Yes, but we always, at the later time, offer the opportunity for the civilization to make a final assessment.
And once you shared about the percentages of civilizations that actually go beyond that stage,
Yes.
what was that?
The idea in general is that, let's say, on average, about 75% of the civilizations we have contacted will actually opt to continue for membership, but some don't.
What are some of the reasons that they don't?
They may find that in their own estimate, once they have become unified enough because of the contact, because they're now looking at things very differently, they may find that they've decided that they are going to create a unique and different destiny for themselves. And we will certainly allow them to do so and go off and find out whatever they need to find out on their own without necessarily becoming a member. In other words, it doesn't mean that they won't necessarily interact with us. They just won't necessarily be acting as an official member of the alliance. They would be acting more as an independent stellar nation.
Okay, great.
That would be one reason. There are many others, but that would be one. Does that help?
I think it does.
All
Does
right.
it help
Does that
everybody
clarify
else?
things? All right. Now you know where you are in the program. You can now take a pin and go, you are here. And here is the upcoming calendar of things that are coming up in the future. So it gives you some sense now, and this is actually an important exercise. It gives you some sense of how far you've come, because you're not that far from the end of the list in general. And therefore you can see that you're progressing in the context of this idea, and you can see that there really isn't that much yet remaining for you to really accelerate forward into the idea of expanding in the way that we have just described. So we thank you for being willing to move forward in this way up to this point with us and other civilizations, because again, you are family. And the idea of reawakening family members so they can rejoin the family and welcoming them home is of great joy to us. So thank you. The being you called Christ's message was, you are all Christ's. Mm-hmm. The idea of follow me is be like me, mm-hmm. because you contain everything I'm showing you. When your Jesus said, I am the way, he did not mean follow him in a religious context. He meant be the way I am, because you are that way. So the idea also is for all of you to understand that this is what the so-called second coming actually is the awakening within each and every one of you of your own Christ consciousness, your own Buddha nature, your own Krishna spirit, your own holy Vavoka. All of that is all who you are, and you've created reflections down through the ages to guide you, to remind you. But because of the disconnection in your consciousness, it didn't always take. But a few people here and there would get it. Until such time as now you have arrived at a place where you finally are beginning to understand
that he was misunderstood in his day.
Very much so. Still misunderstood to this
And the
day.
Bible, I'm thinking, doesn't isn't an accurate translation of what he was trying to
Not
teach
always,
us
no.
to tell us.
No. Much of what, in that sense, that individual was teaching is very similar to what you are now understanding in what you call your metaphysical age. The idea is that simply people back then couldn't understand it. But to put it in a more fundamental sense, Yeshua, or as you say, Jesus, really did not intend in any way, shape, or form to create followers, intended to create leaders, equals, did not intend to create Christians per se, intended to let you all know you are Christ's. That's the greatest misunderstanding of the information. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. So much of what you're understanding today is the idea that that individual was teaching, even down to the concept of how powerfully your beliefs create your reality, yes?
Yeah.
Because did not, in that sense, at least to some degree, the Bible quote him as saying, it is your belief, it is your faith that has made the difference? Yes? And did it not also say that when Yeshua even went back to his hometown, because people there only knew him as a carpenter and did not believe in the things that other people said he could do none of those things in his hometown. And the Bible says so very clearly. You understand?
Yes.
It's all about the idea of your belief system. It's all about the idea of what you know to be true. It's all about your actions, all about your alignment. This is all that individual was saying, and that's what he meant when he said, I am the way. He meant, be this way. I'm the example. I'm the way. Be like me.
Good day. Speak up, speak up.
Hello? Hi. There are countless stories of people, even devout Muslims, having profound experiences of Jesus, leading them to convert. At the same time, there are also demon-related experiences, particularly within the industries like music, where the idea of selling one's souls for fame persists. Based on the concept of a soul's journey by Michael Newton, which suggests, much like you, that we choose our human experiences from the soul plane. How do the figures of Jesus and Satan fit into this framework? If we all originate from the soul plane, what power or force underpins the concepts of Satan? And how do we reconcile the existence and experiences of Jesus if Satan isn't real or vice versa? Where does faith fit into all of this?
Knowingness fits. I understand what you're calling faith, but you don't really need faith if you understand how things work. You just know how they work. The idea of Jesus and Satan fit in as archetypal, symbolic representations energetically of the idea that the universe is a polarity between love and fear. And that's it. It represents love and it represents fear. Because fear is the opposite of love, not hate. Fear is the opposite of love, in the sense that you feel disconnected from source. So the idea of Satan is just an embodiment in human consciousness as an archetypal form that represents the absence of the experience of unconditional love, which is the vibration of existence itself. And love is representative of the vibration of existence itself. So Satan is the idea of the rejection of existence, which can't happen, because you can't cease to exist from fear. And the idea of Jesus is the symbolic representation, and Krishna and Buddha and all of those ascended masters, representative of the idea of being in harmonic association with the vibration of existence itself. Does that explain it to you?
Yes, but where does the force, again, if you look at people that believe in demons or Satan or anything, where does that force or that power come from if we all
it comes through them from source, because source doesn't care which way you go, because source is unconditional. You understand the meaning of that word unconditional?
Yes.
Well, if you understand the meaning of the word unconditional and understand that it's about love and fear, then you understand that polarity is part of existence. And therefore, source doesn't really have an opinion as to which way you go, because it's all capable of giving you lessons. Remember that when you return to your soul, you are in a state of balance, and you know, and you learn lessons from every experience that you've had. whether you spent time in physical reality believing in demons and Satan and experiencing fear, when you go back into your soul state, your true state, your natural state, you understand why you may have done that, how it may have served others, playing off of you, and all sorts of things. It's like playing a role that allows polarity to be played out so the souls can grow and expand based on those lessons, based on those concepts of the play between love and fear.
Okay, one more, please. What key questions can I ask myself to better understand the root of my reactions towards others, especially in frustrating situations like dealing with inconsiderate drivers? And how can I align more deeply with the trait of patience towards them and others in similar situations?
Do you have frustration with young children who you know don't know any better yet?
Not really.
Then take that attitude toward those drivers. They are like young children who haven't learned that everything is an orchestration and can serve a positive purpose, who are simply out of fear and out of the sense of disconnection and out of a sense that they are not getting what fulfills them, are thrashing and lashing out and reacting in negative ways because they feel disconnected. So have compassion for them to understand that they simply need to learn how to connect more to their flow so they can flow and understand that they are part of a big orchestration that is serving humanity in a variety of ways. And if you take that attitude, you will then look at them in the same way that you would look at a young child who is simply just learning how to thrive in physical reality. You wouldn't think of them as any less, and you wouldn't be frustrated by them because you know they still have something to learn. They still have a ways to go. So open your heart and treat them with compassion. All right?
Fair enough. Thank you so much for your insights.
And if you do curse at them, forgive yourself. Teacher, any great master on your planet, such as Buddha or Jesus or Krishna, they were not about creating followers. They were reminding you that you are Buddhas, you are Christs. That's what has been misinterpreted. And therefore, by example, by thought, word, and deed, and living the example, do others then get attracted to your passion, your conviction of living that life, and want to know how you do that. Then you can share ideas and information and help them learn to be more of who they are. Not that they have to choose that, because you must allow them to choose whatever it is they ultimately decide to choose. If you want to be allowed to be who you are, you have to allow them to be who they are fully, with absolutely no insistence that they have to match your frequency at all. Many names for the idea of what you call God: God, Goddess, Allah, Jehovah, Tetragrammaton, the Light, the I Am that I Am, Wakantanka. It doesn't really matter what it is that you use as a name to identify the concept of all that is. But it is important to understand that all of these names represent different archetypal expressions, different angles and different perspectives of the same one thing, so that all of your apparently separate religions, no matter how they present themselves, no matter how many symbols they use to represent the idea of God or aspects of God, are all talking about the same thing, but from different points of view that serve the uniqueness of the culture in which they live. But the idea is to understand that it all comes from source. It all is within the light. And the light, source, all that is, expresses itself in all these ways in order for there to be sufficient symbols for all the different cultural experiences on your planet, all the different individual experiences, even within a culture on your planet. As we have said, the misinterpretation of what you have called in one particular Judeo-Christian culture, the Ten Commandments, are really the messages that were delivered in a very different way that have been misunderstood, misquoted, because of the level of understanding that existed in the culture at the time. And the so-called first commandment, I am the Lord your God, thou shalt not have false gods before me, really was a mistranslation and a misunderstanding of the idea that really would be more accurately represented as, I am that I am, and all reflections are me, therefore none can be false before me, for I am all that is. So the idea is to understand that all that is presents itself in a variety of archetypal forms, the father energy, the mother energy, God, Goddess, all that is, as you sometimes say. And these serve various functions and translate into your reality as, shall we say, smaller representations of all that is that are specifically designed to deal with specific cultural differences, specific ideology differences, specific individual interpretations and differences. Fundamentally speaking, the archetypes are all that is way of making sure that no matter what angle you approach all that is from, you will have a symbol and a representation that can serve your unique perspective. They are all true parts of all that is, because there's nothing outside of all that is. Anything you can experience as an archetypal representation, or even when you assume it is the entire representation of all that is true and accurate, because all that is everything that can possibly be. There's no outside to it. There is nothing that is not it. So it doesn't really matter how you relate, what relationship you form with the idea of any presentation of all that is, any idea or formation of the idea of God, be it the old man with the long beard, be it the idea of the Virgin Mother, be it the idea of a rock or a mountain. It matters not to all that is, because all that is all those things and more, beyond even your imagining. For all that is in its archetypal presentations also forms the symbols that are relatable to not only your particular human culture, but many cultures throughout the cosmos, throughout infinity. Anything and everything being a reflection of all that is has its own way of understanding the presentation of archetypes from source, has its own representations that make sense to their cultures. So there are an infinite variety of presentations of all that is, but it is still the same one thing fundamentally. But as you expand your consciousness and start to realize that all of these are different faces of the same thing, as many people on your planet have expressed, the 9 billion names of God are still representative of the same one thing in the holographic, multidimensional presentation that it can use to present itself, then you start to allow those differences to sort of melt away, except for the parts you feel you need, and allow yourself to have a direct relationship, more directly, with Source, without necessarily needing it to be anything but the light. And in that light, you feel the vibration of the eternal existence that it is, the vibration you translate as the unconditional love of God. This is the vibrational frequency of existence itself. It is unconditionally supporting, unconditionally loving. And the idea is that there is no judgment in this. There is no expression of the negative in this. So even when individuals in different cultures might express or experience the idea of negative or demonic experiences, you have to understand this is still all part of God, because there is the positive, there is the negative, and there is the neutral. These are the major archetypal energies, and they can be expressed in a variety of ways that can serve either positive or negative means. So allow yourselves to lessen the differences, in a sense, use them in whatever way serves you, Use them in whatever way allows you to learn the lessons you need to learn for the agreements that you chose to experience, the challenges that you created for yourself in this life to learn who you are and grow in various situations. Again, using the positive and negative mechanisms in a variety of ways. For ultimately, again, when you return to spirit, when you remember more of who you are, it will just be an experience. You will experience the archetypal expression of your life, which is another archetypal expression, because each and every one of you is unique, and you form your own archetypes for others to connect to draw upon, to download information from and experience from, the archetype that you are of all that is, because everyone is all that is, experiencing itself as all of the individualities that you believe yourself to be. So you are also an archetype of all that is, an archetype of God, experiencing itself in a unique way, knowing itself from a unique perspective. There will be more about this concept in a future transmission, in a way that you can more readily apply in your physical reality experience. But for now, just let it settle into you that every single thing you see, every single thing you experience, in a sense, is an archetypal presentation of all that is, the trees, the rocks, the streams, the animals, the sky, the moon, the stars, the earth itself, are all different variations and different expressions of all that is of source of the light. And you, yourself, are also an archetype of God. In the sense of a spirit that is capable of lowering its vibration enough to be perceived by the senses of the living, that you typically refer to as a ghost, a spirit, when it appears in your world, in your reality. The idea being that spirits who pass over, as you say, who die, who transition, may not always go all the way for a variety of reasons. Some may have unfinished business on earth. Some, because of their belief systems, may not have had a particular expectation or assumption of what they would experience in the so-called afterlife, and thus be a little bit confused about where they are. Some even may not even know they're dead and are wandering, looking for reasons why no one can hear them or see them. But now and then, either due to a lowering of their vibrational frequency, sort of similar to the idea of invisible ultraviolet light lowering its frequency to become visible as part of the visible spectrum of light, going down into violet and blue and so on and so forth. If they lower their frequency, they may become visible to those in the physical realm, or those in the physical realm may have enough sensitivity to perceive that spirit, even though it may not always be visible to everyone. But for some reason, they are still closely connected energetically to the physical realm of Earth, due to some of the reasons we have said or other reasons, and thus are still in their mind living among you, wandering among you, occupying the old houses, so on and so forth, what you typically refer to as a haunting, which doesn't in any way, shape, or form have to be malicious. Simply another person in another state, living in a place among the living. But the idea is that in seeing these beings, there is no way without communicating with them to know the reason why they may still be in what is referred to as the lower astral realm, very close to the vibration of physical reality, lowering their vibration enough to be perceived by physical beings. And this is the older and original definition of an exorcist, sort of a spirit psychologist, to communicate, find out why that being is in that state, why they're still lingering around Earth, which doesn't always have to be for a negative reason. Sometimes
when spirits cross over, and they act, in a sense, as guardians, spirit guides, for those who are still living. There may be reasons why they can learn to lower their vibration to interact with the living in certain ways, even to the degree of appearing solid as a living physical being. This takes some skill and some practice on the part of spirits to do this, because once you are in spirit and in that high frequency vibration that is generally invisible to the living, it is actually not as natural for a spirit to go back down into the lower vibrations and become perceivable to the living. But there are those who may have reason to do so, to appear to the living in certain ways, to deliver messages, or perhaps as a protector, to alert living people to certain ideas, certain situations and circumstances, be it dangerous or not. So those spirits may have a high degree of need to lower their vibration to interact with the living and be perceived as living people until such time as they raise their vibration again and vanish before your eyes. And so there may be great need to do this, or they may simply have chosen to practice the ability of raising and lowering their vibration in order to interact with the living for a variety of their own reasons, or agreements they may have made with the living people with whom they interact. Now, beyond the idea of it actually being a spirit, a ghost per se, that you're interacting with, that is live in real time, as you say, there may be other effects that exist that can be interpreted as seeing a ghost. And one of them is the idea that in the fabric of space-time, everything is recorded. You might say, again, as people on your planet often name it, the Akashic records have a kind of video sort of ability to record things as well as audio or pure information. And all that information is available here and now because everything exists here and now. So again, for those that might be sensitive enough, might extend their senses far enough vibrationally to pick up on certain things that may have happened, linearly speaking, in the past, and perceive the recording, it's etched itself into the fabric of space and time. They may be seeing a recording of sorts, an echo of sorts of things that have been, or even will be, in your linear framework, and perceive that as a living ghost, even though it is simply an echo, a recording, something etched into the fabric of space-time, and is no longer actually present. These kinds of perceptions will usually appear to be repeatable. In other words, a person may say, oh yes, this place is haunted, and at midnight, every 3 days, you see this woman walking down the hallway into this room, and so on and so forth. And if that keeps repeating, it might not be what would be termed a living presence. It might actually be a recording, repeating over and over again when the conditions are right to trigger it, or when the conditions are right in a person's senses to perceive it. So a lot of things that repeat themselves that way may actually not be a living presence. It might be, but it may not be, because it could simply be etched into the fabric of space-time and repeating on a loop. Another way that people might perceive the idea of a ghost that is not a ghost in the classic sense is the idea of peering into parallel realities. Sometimes the so-called barriers between one reality and another will overlap, will weaken, will align vibrationally in some way, shape, or form to allow a person from your reality to actually perceive, although perhaps faintly and dimly, people in other realities. And therefore, in suddenly seeing an apparition wandering through your reality, you might perceive it or think it to be a ghost of someone who has passed over. But in fact, you are actually seeing a faint representation of a person in another reality who is just going about their business, but may seem to you to be a ghost. And they may be able to perceive you that way at that moment as well, and go back to their friends and family with tales of having seen this ghost. And they're just describing you, because again, the veils between the different realities may have weakened for some reason at that point, because these fluctuations do often happen. There are doorways and portals that open to different dimensions on a regular basis, and some of them are random, and sometimes these openings and closings can allow one in your reality to peer into other realities temporarily until they close again. And sometimes these are interpreted as spirits and ghosts when they are not, in the classic sense, such a thing. But the idea of this season is to allow yourself to open up to the potential communication that can exist between you and spirits, spirit guides, family members who may have passed on, soul family groups who may never have even incarnated. It is the ability of your senses to stretch into that realm, especially if someone close to you has died, and is encouraging you to stretch your senses to connect with them in the spirit realm. This is the perfect season and timing to allow yourself to practice this. And this will be the subject of our meditation today to give you an opportunity to do so. So, allow yourselves during your Halloween season, while having fun, playing scary, while having fun being spooked out, while having fun imagining all sorts of strange apparitions and so on and so forth, keep in a corner of your mind the realization that this, in the vibrational cycles of Earth, is also when the veils are thin between the physical and the non-physical. Because remember, the physical is just a projection of consciousness. You yourselves, in a sense, are projections of consciousness as physical beings. So you yourselves, in a sense, are all ghosts, because your natural state is as a spirit, and you are just pretending to be in a physical, solid reality. So you are all ghosts in physical reality, which itself is a ghostly apparition of a consciousness idea that you are exploring. So in remembering that, it can amplify your ability to remember that all of these spirits are right with you and you are right with them, still in spirit with them, while dreaming that you are not. Allow yourself the opportunity to feel that and maintain that connection and increase that connection between yourself and the spirit realm, becoming more lucid and conscious about the fact that physical reality is, in a sense, just an apparition that you're playing around in. And allow yourself this opportunity, because as we do approach the idea of the window of contact and the increase in the splitting prism into different parallel versions of Earth, maintaining and increasing your connection to the spirit realm that you occupy now, right now, as your natural state, will serve you in a variety of ways that we will go into the closer we approach to the beginning of the window of open contact. And serve you with the idea of making contact, because many extraterrestrial beings are extra-dimensional beings and actually have attributes, just as our civilization does, of both physicality and spirit. And thus, the stronger you connect to the fact that you are a spirit, as you say, not so much a human having a spiritual experience, but a spirit having a human experience, you can identify with us more strongly every day and allow the idea of open contact to be a broader experience with many different kinds of beings who are not just physical extraterrestrials in the way that you think of us, but occupy many different dimensional planes just as you do, who are simply aware of the occupation of those planes just as you can become. And therefore blending and melding and merging the idea of physical and spirit in a way that allow you a great deal of freedom, a great deal of expression, and a great deal of being your true self and expanding what that really means in your world.
Where do you see, where does your hopes and where do you think humanity will be in the year 2100, out of curiosity? And has Bashar ever spoken about what the potential of that time period would be for us?
Well, yes, it's the beginning of what he's saying. The evolutionary path for humanity is what he calls evolving into the sixth hybrid race, which is going to expand into the galaxy in a certain way. And we're going to become other civilizations' UFOs. eventually. We're going to be that are going to help other civilizations up the ladder in the same way that these civilizations that we're dealing with are helping us up the ladder. So it's really about becoming members of a galactic society, a galactic family. And it's really about letting ourselves change in ways that give us more abilities. The hybrid beings are going to be coming to live among us. The hybrid children are going to be coming to live among us. There will eventually be blending, and we will be coming, well, as Bashar kind of puts it, we'll actually finally becoming fully human, because we're not fully human yet. So he sees that as the true evolutionary result of us opening up to accept more of who and what we are, connecting to our spiritual selves, bringing more of our souls through the physical experience of our lives, through our physical avatars, and really being star beings, really owning what and who we are. And that's going to really just change everything on the earth that we decide to go to, if that's the direction we decide to go. Again, there will be those that don't. But for those that do, I think it will be expanding beyond what we can imagine right now, because there are so many things we're just unaware of that are going on out in the cosmos that we can become a part of. You know, we'll have unlimited resources. There will be no lack of anything. You know, the whole science fiction scenario of, you know, aliens coming to Earth to get our minerals and our resources and stuff like that. There are so many things out there. It's so abundant out there. They have no lack of anything, and no lack of an ability to get the resources that they need. They certainly don't need this planet to get that. What they need this planet for, and how Earth is so important to them, is what's going on the planet. The idea of how we're facing our challenges, how we're transforming things, the different stories that are being played out here, the effect that the conclusion of those stories have on the cosmos. It's our agreement to be the souls that experience these things and finish these stories that is really the important step to all of these alien civilizations. It's our discovery of our self-empowerment through these incredibly limiting challenges. This is why Bashar has for a long time called us the masters of limitation, because for a while we have been the masters of creating limitation. But when he then says, but what you're doing is learning to become the masters of limitation, where you can overcome those limitations, transform those limitations. And this is a challenging school. But the fact that we can overcome the limitations we put on ourselves is something that other civilizations are also learning from. Because if we can overcome these limitations, these incredible dark limitations, negative limitations, fear-based limitations, as deeply as we've created them and still overcome them, well, civilizations that may not be as steeped in those limitations can look at us and go, well, gosh, if they can do it, we can do it, because we're not as limited as they are, and yet they can still overcome those limitations. So we're a good lesson for a lot of civilizations that are looking to us to be the ones that show this is how you do it. This is how you lose yourself and find yourself again.